Husband came begging, his ex-wife 5 years later. After his 15-year marriage betrayal unaware, the woman who walked away quietly is now a billionaire CEO. He betrayed her after 15 long years of marriage, and when she walked away, he laughed, certain she would never survive without him. Daniel believed he'd buried Elena for good the night he paraded his mistress into their home, tore up their memories, and told her, "You're finished without me. You'll come crawling back." But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply looked at him one last time, whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what peace costs," and walked away quietly. No one saw her again. Not at the parties she once hosted, not in the city where her name had once been his pride. While Daniel built his empire on arrogance, the woman he discarded was building something far greater in silence. 5 years later, the empire she built would tower over his. The world would know her as Elena Carter, the billionaire CEO of Aurora Holdings. And the man who mocked her? He would be the one standing at her door, broke, desperate, and begging the woman who once begged him to stay. He never knew the silence he mistook for surrender was the sound of a woman rebuilding her throne. He never knew that the one who walked away quietly would be the name whispered in boardrooms and printed on billion-dollar contracts. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's the testament that dignity speaks louder than revenge, and that sometimes the quietest woman becomes the most powerful storm. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting her victory fade back into silence. Click that button, and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, so Elena knows the world is listening to the woman who walked away quietly and came back unstoppable. The steak had turned cold. The candles had melted down to stubs. Only the ticking of the gold clock filled the silence of the glass penthouse. Elena Carter stood by the table, her hands trembling slightly as she straightened the cutlery for the third time. 15 years of marriage, and she still couldn't let go of the small habits. Perfect table settings, soft music, the scent of rosemary that Daniel once said reminded him of home. But tonight, home felt like a stage she was forced to perform on alone. The elevator chimed. Her heart leapt, then sank when she heard the sharp laughter that followed. Daniel's voice came first, smooth and careless, followed by another laugh, a woman's. He stepped in, his tie loosened, his cologne heavy, his arm draped around a tall brunette in a red dress. Clara. Elena knew the name before she even heard it. The woman worked at his company. She had met her once at a corporate dinner. "Still awake?" Daniel said lightly, as if he hadn't disappeared for 3 nights in a row. He didn't even look at the table she'd prepared. "You didn't have to wait." Elena's throat tightened. "It's our anniversary," she whispered. Clara's lips curled. "Oh, 15 years, right? That's impressive." She said it like a joke, like the years meant nothing. Elena tried to breathe evenly. "I thought we could have dinner. Just us." Daniel glanced at the table, then shrugged. "We already ate." His voice carried no guilt. "You should have called instead of assuming." Her fingers dug into the edge of the chair. Every word scraped against her chest. "You promised you'd come home early." He laughed softly. "You take promises too seriously, Elena. That's why you're always disappointed." The woman who had once built his world now felt smaller than the shadow he cast. Elena's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Something inside her, the part that once waited, forgave, and hoped, finally broke in silence. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. So many lights, she thought, and yet I'm standing in the dark. Behind her, Daniel's phone buzzed. Clara picked it up, smiling. "We should go, babe. Early meeting tomorrow." Daniel nodded, already halfway to the door. "Don't wait up." The elevator doors slid shut with a hiss. Elena stood still, the silence louder than their cruelty. Then she blew out the last candle, one by one, until the room fell into darkness. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, and as she turned away, her eyes caught the faint glow from Daniel's forgotten laptop on the counter, its screen flickering with unread emails. She didn't know it yet, but the next click she made would change everything. The sound shattered the quiet, an urgent ding that echoed through the empty penthouse like a warning bell. Elena froze. It was Daniel's laptop, still open on the kitchen counter, the screen glowing in the dark like a secret begging to be seen. Her heart pounded in her ears. For a long moment, she didn't move. She knew she shouldn't look. She wanted to keep believing that what she saw tonight was only confusion, not confirmation. But then the email alert flashed again. From Clara L. Subject: the deal closes once she signs. Her trembling hand brushed the trackpad. The message opened. She doesn't suspect anything. Once Elena signs the property transfer, you'll finally be free. I booked the hotel for the weekend. Love you. Elena's breath caught. Her hand clamped over her mouth. Her knees went weak, and she sank onto the nearest chair. The words blurred through tears, but the meaning burned clear. Daniel hadn't just betrayed her heart. He was moving to take everything she owned. The apartment swam before her eyes, the paintings she'd chosen, the furniture she'd paid for, the empire she'd quietly helped him build. All of it now turning into weapons against her. Her pulse slowed, and the intensity of the shock bled into a cold, heavy stillness. She stared at the glowing screen, her reflection faint in the glass, pale, shaking, unrecognizable. She whispered to herself, "You weren't just cheating, Daniel. You were planning my erasure." She scrolled. Another email loaded, dated last week. She's too soft to fight back. Once she's gone, I'll be the sole name on every document. Something shifted inside her, then not an explosion, but a quiet cracking, like glass giving way under pressure. The years of waiting, forgiving, and hoping fused into one wordless realization. She stood up, wiped her tears, closed the laptop slowly, deliberately. The same fingers that once buttoned his shirts now pressed down on the lid until the screen went black. She walked toward the mirror near the hallway. Her reflection stared back, eyes red, face tired, but behind the pain, something sharp had awakened. In the silence, she whispered, "You'll never see me break again." Outside, thunder rolled over the city, echoing through the problem windows. Elena picked up the laptop and set it on the table, her mind already spinning. Somewhere inside that machine, she knew, lay more than betrayal proof, maybe, and the beginning of her escape. As lightning flashed, it illuminated a small envelope Daniel had left beside his briefcase, her name printed neatly across it. Tomorrow, when she opens that envelope, it won't just end their marriage. It will start her war. The door burst open. Elena jumped, the half-closed laptop trembling under her hand. Daniel staggered in, rain dripping from his suit jacket, his face flushed from whiskey. His tie hung loose, his phone still in his palm. A woman's voice spilled from the speaker, Clara's voice, laughing. "Turn that off," Elena said, her voice low but steady. He didn't. He smirked. "Why? Embarrassed to hear the truth?" He tossed the phone onto the couch and looked around, noticing the dinner table still set. "You still trying to play wife?" Her chest burned. 15 years, Daniel. 15 years of loyalty, and you walk in here with her voice on your phone? He shrugged, unbothered. "Don't start the drama, Elena. You knew this marriage was over long before I said it. You just didn't want to face it." "I didn't know you were planning to steal everything I built," she snapped. "I saw your emails." That hit him. His smirk twitched, but he recovered fast. "You went through my computer? That's low, even for you." "Low?" She took a shaky step forward. "You were arranging to have me sign my name away. You were laughing about it with her." He stepped closer, the arrogance thick in his smile. "You think you built anything? Everything you touched came from me. I gave you this life." The words slammed into her like a slap, but beneath the pain, something began to cool. The fear melted. Her tears stopped. "You're wrong," she said softly. "You gave me comfort, but I built your peace." He laughed. "Peace? You've been a burden for years, Elena. The only reason I didn't leave sooner was because pity's hard to shake off." The glass in her hand cracked under pressure. It cut her palm, but she didn't flinch. "Pity?" she whispered. "You mistake patience for weakness." "Whatever makes you sleep better," he said, grabbing a folder from his bag. "Sign these papers. You'll get enough to live quietly if you behave." Her eyes fell to the folder. Divorce papers, property transfers, everything she'd already seen in those emails. She looked up at him, truly looked, and realized she no longer feared him. Not his voice, not his power, not his cruelty. She took the pen, signed one page, then dropped it on the table with a small, deliberate smile. You'll regret underestimating silence, she said quietly. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? She turned her back, pressing a napkin to her bleeding hand. You'll find out soon enough. Behind her, Daniel's phone buzzed again, another message from Clara. This one read, Did she sign everything yet? Remember, once she's gone, we move fast. Elena glanced at the glowing phone screen, and a single thought cut through her fear. They think I'm gone already. Let's see how right they are. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart? The rain pounded harder that night. Thunder cracked like broken promises as Elena shoved her suitcase shut. Every zip, every fold, every step felt heavier than the last. The penthouse that once glowed with warmth now looked like a stranger's house. Cold marble floors, empty wine glasses, and the faint smell of perfume that wasn't hers. Her bleeding hand throbbed as she pressed it against her coat. The cut from the glass stung, but it was nothing compared to the wound inside her chest. She looked around one last time. The photo on the mantel, her and Daniel smiling on their wedding day, was cracked from the fall earlier. She bent, picked it up, and stared at it for a long, still moment. Then, without a word, she turned the frame face down. Lightning flashed through the windows as she took her small suitcase and headed for the elevator. Each step echoed like a countdown, 15 years of love, 15 years of loyalty, now ending in quiet footsteps on polished floors. The elevator doors opened with a metallic sigh. She stepped inside, her reflection mirrored across the golden walls. For the first time, she didn't see a broken woman. She saw someone who had survived a fire and was walking out alive. Her phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. Don't be dramatic, Elena. You'll thank me one day. She stared at it, her lips trembling but not with sadness this time. You'll wish I was dramatic, she whispered, pressing delete. The elevator descended. Each floor she passed felt like shedding another layer of pain. When the doors opened to the lobby, the doorman, Mr. Hensley, stood frozen. He was an older man, gray hair, kind eyes, the only person in the building who ever asked if she was okay. Mrs. Carter, he said softly, his face worried. You're leaving? In this weather? Elena nodded, forcing a smile. Yes, Mr. Hensley, it's just time. He hesitated. Do you need a cab? She shook her head. No, I need peace. He nodded slowly, his gaze following her as she stepped out into the storm. The wind whipped her hair, the rain, soaking through her coat, but she didn't stop. Each drop washed something off her, the humiliation, the fear, the old version of herself. As she reached the curb, a black sedan pulled up beside her. The tinted window rolled down slowly, revealing a familiar voice. Elena Carter? A calm male voice asked. Mr. Whitmore sent me. He said you'd be needing his help. Her breath caught. She didn't know it yet, but that single name, Whitmore, would become the key to the empire she'd one day command. The flickering motel sign buzzed in the rain. Half the word hope burned out so only OP glowed weakly against the night. Water dripped from Elena's coat as she pushed open the creaky door to room 12. The stale air smelled of bleach and lost dreams. She dropped her small suitcase by the bed, the springs sagging like her spirit. The rain outside beat against the window in angry rhythm, each drop echoing her heartbeat. Her hands still hurt from the glass cut, wrapped now in a strip of old tissue. She stood in the center of the room for a long moment, listening to the hum of the heater, the distant thunder, the silence inside her. Everything she once owned, her home, her comfort, her trust, was gone. Her reflection in the cracked mirror was pale and hollow. The woman staring back at her looked like a ghost, not the wife who had once laughed at candlelit dinners. But beneath the exhaustion, something new was beginning, something fierce. She sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her knees close, and her mind drifted to the past. Flashback. 15 years earlier, she and Daniel had sat in a cheap diner, hands clasped across the table. He'd promised, "Whatever happens, we face it together. I'll build, you'll dream." She'd smiled, believing him with all her heart. Back then, the future seemed full of color. The memory burned now like acid. "He took everything," she whispered, voice breaking. "But he couldn't take my will." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not anymore. She stood and opened the small nightstand drawer. Inside lay a faded notepad and a broken pen. She stared at it, then sat down and began to write slowly, deliberately, across the first clean page. "Start again." The words looked small, but they pulsed with power. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the rain-streaked window. The water on the glass shimmered like tears, but these weren't hers anymore. She had cried her last. She turned off the room's single light and lay back on the bed, whispering into the darkness. "You destroyed the life I had, Daniel. But I'm going to build one you'll never reach." Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Unknown number. One message. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Whitmore will see you tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Her eyes widened. The name again. Whitmore. Elena didn't know that meeting him would not only rewrite her fate, it would become the first brick in the empire her ex-husband would one day kneel before. The next morning, the world turned cruel. Elena woke to her phone, buzzing nonstop. Dozens of notifications blinked across the cracked screen, like sparks from a fire she couldn't put out. She hesitated, thumb hovering above the screen, then opened one. Headline: CEO Daniel Carter files for divorce, sources say wife couldn't keep up with his success. Her breath hitched. Another post followed, then another. Each headline sharper than the last, each one slicing deeper. She lost her mind after he made it big. He deserved better, she was holding him back. Elena Carter vanished last night. Watch her disappear. That last comment froze her. Watch her disappear. The words crawled under her skin, echoing like a dare. She sat on the edge of the motel bed, scrolling until her vision blurred. Photos of her old charity galas, board events, red carpets now filled gossip pages, with captions twisting her silence into scandal. The same faces that once smiled beside her now reposted lies with laughing emojis. Her chest tightened, the ache almost physical. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, but after a while something shifted. She stopped crying. She stared at her phone screen one last time, then opened her social media account. The world expected her to post a defense, a denial, a desperate plea for dignity. Instead, she tapped delete account. The confirmation message appeared. "Are you sure you want to erase your profile?" She pressed yes. The screen went black. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was cleansing. The laughter outside her digital walls couldn't reach her anymore. For the first time in years, the noise was gone. She took a deep breath. In that small motel room, she began to understand something powerful. They could mock her name, twist her story, erase her online, but they couldn't define who she was becoming. She whispered to herself, steady and calm, "Let them laugh. I'll give them something to talk about later." Her reflection in the rain-streaked window looked different now. Still bruised, still tired, but sharper. Her loneliness had become something stronger. Focus. She turned off her phone completely, tucked it into her bag, and picked up her notepad from the nightstand. On the first line beneath "Start Again," she wrote, "Rule 1. Build in silence. Let success do the speaking." A faint smile tugged at her lips. The world might have buried her, but they had just cleared the ground for her rise. Her eyes lifted toward the clock. 7:43 a.m. 15 minutes until her meeting. Outside, a sleek black car pulled up under the motel's flickering sign. A man in a suit stepped out, checked his watch, and looked up toward her window. Mr. Whitmore's driver had arrived. The years did not pass quietly, they worked quietly. 5 years later, the world had long forgotten the woman they once mocked. The headlines that smeared her name had been buried under new scandals. But while the noise faded, Elena Carter was building her foundation in silence. The scene opened with her bent over a small wooden desk in a rented room above a bookstore. The light bulb flickered weakly overhead, her eyes strained from studying balance sheets and night school textbooks. Her hands, once soft from luxury, now bore faint calluses, the marks of someone who'd learned to survive without help. Stacks of papers surrounded her business plans, sketches, ideas written in pen and crossed out, rewritten again and again. In one corner of the room stood a vision board cut from old magazines, words like rebuild, integrity, and future. Every night after her remote accounting shifts ended, she stayed awake, drawing up models for a new kind of company, one built on fairness and truth, the very values Daniel had thrown away. Her old life had been taken. Her new one was being designed, quietly. She'd stopped wearing jewelry, stopped caring for gossip, and started focusing on progress. Every failure became a lesson, every sleepless night an investment. Then one morning, as she was packing her notes into an envelope to send for a small grant, a soft knock sounded on the door. "Come in," she said, her voice calm, cautious. An elderly woman stepped inside, elegant in a simple gray suit. Her white hair was pinned neatly, her eyes sharp and kind. "I'm Mrs. Carter," she introduced, setting a folder on the table. "A retired investor. I've been following your work through the community program. Your projections are sound. You're building something honest." Elena froze. "Mrs. Carter, you mean?" The woman smiled. "No relation, my dear, but maybe fate thought you could use another Carter in your story." She opened her folder, revealing a check. $20,000. Seed money, let's see what you can make of it." Elena stared, speechless. "What name should I give it?" "The," woman asked softly. Elena looked toward the window. Morning light was breaking over the city skyline, painting gold across the rooftops. "Aurora," she said finally. "Because dawn always comes quietly." Mrs. Carter's eyes gleamed with pride. "Then let it rise, Elena. Quietly, but brightly." The older woman left, and Elena stood by the window, holding the check close to her chest. The first real light she'd felt in years reflected off the paper. As the camera pulled back, the sign on her desk came into view. AU or Aurora Holdings. Founded 2018, and beneath it, a single whisper escaped her lips. "Let's see who laughs when the dawn breaks." The scene opened with chaos, phones ringing, printers whirring, and Elena Carter balancing 3 files in her arms as rain pounded against the co-working office windows. "Contract number 6, someone shouted from across the shared space. A paper slipped from her stack, scattering across the wet floor. For a split second, panic flickered. Then Elena laughed softly, the sound calm, grounded, almost amused. She was no longer the fragile woman who once shook in silence. She was rebuilding one small contract, one late night, one risk at a time. Her first office wasn't grand. It was a corner desk in a co-working space with a flickering lamp and an old coffee mug that read, "Make it happen." But to her, it was a kingdom. Every day brought challenges, rejected proposals, missed calls, late payments. But every failure came with a lesson. And with every lesson, she grew stronger. Flashback. She remembered the early days, the investor who called her too emotional for leadership, the bank that declined her small business loan, the nights she went without dinner to pay for another business license. Each disappointment had forged her resolve, polishing her composure until even silence felt powerful. Now, Aurora Holdings was gaining attention. Small tech startups trusted her. Local vendors praised her fairness. She didn't fight for attention. Her integrity drew it naturally. Across from her, Mrs. Carter, her mentor and silent investor, sat by the window with a steaming cup of tea. Her silver hair shimmered in the afternoon light, her eyes studying Elena like a proud teacher. "People think silence means defeat," Elena said, sorting through invoices. Mrs. Carter smiled knowingly. "It only means you're choosing where to roar." The words landed deep. Elena looked up, her gaze calm but resolute. "Then I'll roar where it matters most." On her desk sat a small flock of paper cranes, each one folded from an old contract page. It had become her ritual. Every client gained, every promise honored, turned into a crane. She called them her quiet victories. Mrs. Carter traced one gently. "These little things, they'll remind you how far you've come. They'll remind me who I became," Elena corrected softly. Outside, the storm eased, sunlight cutting through the gray clouds. It spilled across the desk, glinting off the cranes like wings ready to take flight. A knock interrupted the calm. A young assistant entered, nervous but excited. "Miss Carter, there's someone requesting a meeting. Says he's from Carter Enterprises." Elena froze. That name. That company. Her pulse slowed. "What's his name?" The assistant hesitated. "He said you'd know him. Daniel Carter." Elena's fingers brushed the nearest paper crane and crushed it slowly in her palm. "Tell him. I'll see him." The boardroom lights glared like spotlights on a stage. Dozens of eyes turned toward the tall woman at the head of the table, confident posture, calm expression, black suit sharp as glass. But no one in that room knew who she truly was. "Ladies and gentlemen," the moderator said, voice trembling slightly, "please welcome the CEO of Aurora Holdings, Miss E.C. Turner." Cameras flashed, hands clapped. The woman smiled faintly. Elena Carter Turner, the name she'd chosen after years of silence, nodded once, then began. "We are not just rebuilding companies," she said, her voice steady, deliberate. "We are rebuilding trust." Her words carried the weight of every humiliation she had endured, but none of the bitterness. She had learned long ago that true revenge didn't come from anger, it came from excellence. The investors leaned forward as she continued, explaining Aurora's expansion. Technology firms, clean energy projects, ethical finance ventures. Her tone was measured, professional, impossible to challenge. When she finished, an older man in a gray suit spoke. "I've been in this industry 30 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of dreamers. But you?" He smiled, impressed. "You run Aurora?" Elena's eyes met his. She gave a small, knowing smile. "I am Aurora." The room went silent, then applause filled the air. As the meeting broke, reporters gathered by the door. No one noticed that her nameplate only read E.C. Turner. No one connected her to the broken woman Daniel Carter had divorced 5 years earlier. The world had erased Elena Carter, and she had used that erasure as her disguise. After the room cleared, Mrs. Carter entered quietly. Her mentor's cane clicked softly against the marble floor. "You did well," she said. "The world sees a mystery now. That's more powerful than fame." Elena smiled gently. "They only see the initials, not the scars behind them." "Initials can be armor," Mrs. Carter replied. "Anonymity is your weapon." Elena walked to the tall window, looking out at the skyline that had once seemed unreachable. "He always said I'd disappear," she murmured. "Maybe he was right. I disappeared and came back untouchable." Mrs. Carter nodded, her eyes glinting. "And one day, he'll realize the woman he betrayed is the one holding his future." Thunder rolled softly in the distance, like a reminder of storms long past. Elena's phone buzzed on the table. A message from her secretary flashed across the screen. "Carter Enterprises has requested a meeting with Aurora Holdings next week. They're desperate for a merger." Elena's reflection in the glass hardened. "Let them come," she whispered. "They'll meet E.C. Turner, not the woman they left behind." The boardroom lights glared like spotlights on a stage. Dozens of eyes turned toward the tall woman at the head of the table, confident posture, calm expression, black suit sharp as glass. But no one in that room knew who she truly was. "Ladies and gentlemen," the moderator said, voice trembling slightly, "please welcome the CEO of Aurora Holdings, Miss E.C. Turner." Cameras flashed. Hands clapped. The woman smiled faintly. Elena Carter Turner, the name she'd chosen after years of silence, nodded once, then began. "We are not just rebuilding companies," she said, her voice steady, deliberate. "We are rebuilding trust." Her words carried the weight of every humiliation she had endured, but none of the bitterness. She had learned long ago that true revenge didn't come from anger, it came from excellence. The investors leaned forward as she continued, explaining Aurora's expansion. Technology firms, clean energy projects, ethical finance ventures. Her tone was measured, professional, impossible to challenge. When she finished, an older man in a gray suit spoke. "I've been in this industry 30 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of dreamers. But you," he smiled, impressed. "You run Aurora?" Elena's eyes met his. She gave a small, knowing smile. "I am Aurora." The room went silent. Then applause filled the air. As the meeting broke, reporters gathered by the door. No one noticed that her nameplate only read E.C. Turner. No one connected her to the broken woman Daniel Carter had divorced 5 years earlier. The world had erased Elena Carter, and she had used that erasure as her disguise. After the room cleared, Mrs. Carter entered quietly. Her mentor's cane clicked softly against the marble floor. "You did well," she said. "The world sees a mystery now. That's more powerful than fame." Elena smiled gently. "They only see the initials, not the scars behind them. Initials can be armor," Mrs. Carter replied. "Anonymity is your weapon." Elena walked to the tall window, looking out at the skyline that had once seemed unreachable. "He always said I'd disappear," she murmured. "Maybe he was right. I disappeared and came back untouchable." Mrs. Carter nodded, her eyes glinting. "And one day, he'll realize the woman he betrayed is the one holding his future." Thunder rolled softly in the distance, like a reminder of storms long past. Elena's phone buzzed on the table. A message from her secretary flashed across the screen. "Carter Enterprises has requested a meeting with Aurora Holdings next week. They're desperate for a merger." Elena's reflection in the glass hardened. "Let them come," she whispered. "They'll meet E.C. Turner, not the woman they left behind." The sound of shouting erupted through the glass walls of Thornton Logistics' boardroom. Papers flew. A coffee cup shattered against the marble floor. Daniel Carter slammed his fist on the table. "You're all cowards," he roared, veins bulging at his temple. "We just need one more quarter, one investor willing to take the risk." Across from him, Clara shifted uncomfortably in her sleek black dress. Her tone was sharp but measured, the voice of a woman who'd learned to survive beside arrogance. "Daniel, investors aren't leaving because of bad luck. They're leaving because they don't trust you anymore." He spun toward her, eyes blazing. "I gave them everything. My time, my vision, my name." She cut him off. "Your name doesn't open doors anymore. It closes them." The room fell into uneasy silence. Daniel's breath came heavy, anger fading into something colder, fear. He turned toward the glass wall, staring at his reflection. For a moment, he didn't recognize the man looking back. The confident CEO had been replaced by someone older, harder, worn down. A crack ran across the mirrored surface, faint but visible. The reflection split, jagged and distorted. His pride had shattered long before the glass did. Clara crossed her arms. "The board is talking about a buyout. They want someone stable to take over. Someone who can fix what's left." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Stable? You mean replace me?" "They're already considering it," she said softly. "Thornton is drowning, Daniel. Maybe it's time to ask for help," he scoffed. "From who?" She hesitated, pulling a printed proposal from her folder. "There's a company rumored to have deep capital reserves, Aurora Holdings. They've been buying distressed firms quietly for years. They could save us." Daniel frowned. "Aurora?" The name rang faintly familiar, but he couldn't place it. Clara continued. "Their CEO, E.C. Turner, is known for reviving companies others abandon. Calm, strategic, almost invisible, but effective." Daniel paced to the window, the skyline blurring behind streaks of rain. He hated the thought of asking anyone for help, but desperation had already begun to outweigh pride. "Fine," he muttered. "Set the meeting. If they can fix this mess, I'll make the deal." Clara gave a small nod, though her eyes flickered with unease. "I'll arrange it." Daniel turned away from her, gripping the cracked glass. His own fractured reflection stared back. "Whoever this Turner is," he muttered, "they'll finally understand what it means to deal with Daniel Carter." Clara looked down at the proposal, her lips tightening as she read the initials. Again, E.C. Turner. If only Daniel knew the storm he was about to walk into. The meeting began with the intensity of desperation. Daniel Carter stood before the gleaming glass wall of Aurora Holdings' top-floor boardroom, sweat faintly gathering at his collar despite the air conditioning. His voice carried confidence, but his eyes betrayed strain. "We believe in loyalty," he declared, gesturing to the screen filled with charts. "And partnership. Two values that built Thornton Logistics from the ground up. With Aurora's support, we can rebuild stronger together." Around the polished mahogany table, Aurora's executives exchanged polite glances, their faces unreadable. The tension in the room was thick. One of the executives, a young woman with a tablet, leaned slightly forward. Mr. Carter, we appreciate your passion. But Aurora doesn't just invest in numbers. We invest in integrity. Daniel gave a practiced smile. Then you'll find no shortage of that. Here. As he spoke, the conference room doors slid open with a soft mechanical hiss. Everyone turned instinctively. The CEO had arrived. She walked in with quiet grace, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The air changed the moment she entered, like calm before a thunderstorm. Daniel's voice faltered. He turned slowly, ready to introduce himself to this elusive E.C. Turner he'd heard so much about. But his words died on his tongue, because standing before him was a face he thought he'd buried 5 years ago. "Elena?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Her expression didn't change. Her gaze was steady, cool, professional. She stopped at the head of the table, setting down her folder, and nodded at the team. "Continue," she said softly, then turned her eyes to Daniel. "You were saying something about loyalty and partnership?" He swallowed hard, trying to recover. I didn't realize." "No," she interrupted, her tone calm but cutting. "You didn't realize much back then either." A faint murmur rippled among the executives. None dared to speak. The silence hung heavy. Elena finally took her seat, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Please," she said, her voice now cool as glass, "continue your presentation. Aurora is very interested in understanding how you define loyalty these days." Daniel's jaw tightened. His fingers twitched against the laser pointer. For the first time in years, he had no words. Across the room, Elena's mentor, Mrs. Carter, stood quietly in the corner, observing like a guardian of truth. Her eyes flicked toward Elena with subtle pride. The woman who once walked away in silence was now sitting in command. Daniel stared at the logo behind her Aura Holdings and realized with a chill that the empire he'd come begging to was born from the ashes of the woman he'd destroyed. Elena's lips curved into the faintest, coldest smile. "Don't worry, Daniel," she said softly. "This time, I'll let the whole world hear your pitch." The conference room pulsed with energy. Assistants moved like clockwork, hands full of checklists, folders, and glowing tablets. The air was thick with anticipation and something sharper: precision. At the center of it all sat Elena Carter Turner, calm, composed, unstoppable. "Run me through the guest list again," she said, her tone measured but firm. Her assistant, Mia, scrolled quickly through her tablet. Confirmed attendees include heads of state, major investors, press executives, and, she hesitated, Daniel Carter. He RSVP'd this morning. The pen in Elena's hand paused midair. For half a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Then she set the pen down gently and smiled. "Good," she said. "Then let's make sure the lighting is merciless." A few team members exchanged uncertain glances, unsure if she was joking. She wasn't. "The stage?" she continued. "Set," said another coordinator. "The backdrop reads Empires Built on Integrity." Elena nodded slowly. "Perfect." Her gaze shifted toward the panoramic window, where the city shimmered beneath the setting sun. "Let's remind everyone that empires without it always fall." Her voice carried no bitterness, only clarity. Mia adjusted her headset, still curious. "Ma'am, if I may, why allow him to attend? After everything?" Elena looked up. The light caught her eyes, reflecting strength forged through years of silence. "Because true justice doesn't chase. It waits where the guilty walk in willingly." The room fell quiet again. Her calm had gravity, the kind that made everyone instinctively follow. Across the table, Mrs. Carter, her mentor, observed quietly with folded hands. "You've learned well," she murmured. "Power with grace, justice with restraint." Elena offered a faint smile. "I learned from the best." Her assistant spoke again. "Everything is ready for the broadcast. Global syndication confirmed. The theme of the night, integrity and leadership, will open with your keynote. Then that's where truth begins," Elena said, standing. She moved toward the tall windows, the skyline reflecting across her black silk suit like armor. "We'll give the world a lesson on what it means to build honestly." The entire team stood still, almost in reverence. For 5 years, the world had written Elena off as a forgotten ex-wife. Tomorrow night, the same world would watch her redefine power. As she reached for her folder, the screen on her phone lit up a private message from an unknown number. See you at the gala, Elena. Don't forget who taught you how to play the game. D. C. Her smile faded, replaced by cool determination. She slipped the phone into her bag and whispered, "Oh, I haven't forgotten, Daniel. I just learned to win." The ballroom thundered with applause as golden lights swept across marble and glass. Cameras flashed. Strings played a soaring melody. Beneath a sky of paper cranes, hundreds of them, folded from Aurora contracts, the stage glimmered like a crown. Daniel Carter stood near the back, frozen in place. His tuxedo was perfect, but his eyes darted anxiously across the crowd. He hadn't seen her yet. The master of ceremonies raised the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate empires built on integrity. Please welcome our visionary CEO, Miss E.C. Turner." The spotlights flared blinding, merciless. From the far end of the hall, Elena stepped forward. The room seemed to hold its breath. She wore the same blue dress from that humiliating night years ago, but now it was recut, regal, perfectly tailored. No stains, no shame, only quiet power. The crowd rose in applause that sounded like waves breaking against stone. Daniel's lips parted. His voice trembled. "Elena?" She didn't look at him. Instead, she climbed the stairs to the stage, each step deliberate, steady. The paper cranes above caught the light, shimmering like memories reclaimed. At the podium, she waited for the applause to fade. When silence finally fell, she smiled calm, assured, untouchable. "5 years ago," she began, her voice carrying through the speakers, "I learned that silence isn't defeat, it's preparation. Every setback, every betrayal, every insult, they became lessons in strength." The crowd leaned forward, transfixed. Daniel felt sweat forming at the back of his neck. "Integrity," she continued, "isn't just a word we print on banners. It's a choice we make when no one is watching." Aurora Holdings was built on that choice and on the belief that light must always expose the truth. As she spoke, the lights dimmed slightly, narrowing the spotlight until it fell directly on Daniel. Gasps rippled through the audience. Reporters turned their cameras. Elena's gaze finally met his. Her eyes were calm, almost kind. "I once knew a man who believed power meant control," she said softly. "He forgot that the greatest empires collapse when they're built on deceit." Daniel's throat went dry. The walls seemed to close in. The audience whispered. The press lenses flashed faster. Elena stepped back from the podium. "So, tonight," she said, "we honor the builders and expose the destroyers." The orchestra swelled. Behind her, a massive screen flickered to life, displaying the title of her next address, "The True Story Behind Thornton's Fall." Daniel's heart stopped. As the lights burned brighter, Elena's eyes glinted with calm fire. "Sometimes," she murmured into the mic, "justice only needs a stage." The ballroom erupted into chaos the moment the screen behind Elena changed. Charts, documents, and archived footage rolled in sequence: Thornton logistics, falsified reports, embezzlement leaks, fraudulent supplier chains. Gasps spread like wildfire. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Daniel staggered back, pale and cornered, his confident smile gone. Every word she'd said now had proof glowing 10 feet tall behind her. "Miss Turner," a reporter called sharply, "are these claims suggesting Thornton Logistics engaged in unethical practices under Daniel Carter's leadership?" Elena faced the crowd with calm control. "The evidence speaks for itself," she said simply. Another reporter shouted, "And what inspired Aurora's focus on integrity?" A hush fell again. Elena's gaze softened for a second. A flicker of memory passed over her face. The motel rain, the flickering OP sign of broken hope. Then she lifted her chin. "Resilience," she said quietly. "Some foundations start as cracks, but when light passes through those cracks, it builds something unbreakable." The room froze. It wasn't revenge in her tone, it was truth. The audience leaned in, transfixed. An older journalist near the front stood. "Miss Turner, are you implying that your personal history with Mr. Carter influenced Aurora's ethics policy?" Elena's lips curved slightly. "I'm implying that betrayal teaches clarity faster than success ever can." A sharp murmur spread. Phones buzzed. Investors whispered in corners. Screens across the room flickered with live social media feeds. Aurora Gala number, integrity over power, number Thornton collapse. At the back of the hall, Clara Daniels, current operations manager, checked her phone. The company's stock had started to plummet mid-event. Live. Investors were pulling out, one by one. Daniel's voice cracked through the rising hum. "Elena, this is slander," he shouted, stepping forward. "You, Mr. Carter," interrupted the MC quickly, but it was too late. Cameras turned to him like judgment. Elena didn't move. "No," she said softly, "it's truth. And the world can decide which one of us has lived by it." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then applause. Slow, deliberate, growing, until the entire ballroom stood. Daniel stood alone in the spotlight, the same one that once crowned him successful, now exposing him completely. Elena turned from the mic, her composure unbroken. She wasn't smiling, but peace glowed in her eyes. Vindication without venom. Beside the stage, "Mrs. Carter whispered to her, "You've done it, dear." Elena's voice was quiet, almost wistful. "Not yet." As she looked toward the exit, her gaze hardened slightly. "The world's only seen the truth," she murmured. "Now it's time they hear the proof." The terrace doors burst open. Cool night air swept through, chasing away the leftover heat of cameras and whispers. The city stretched below silver towers and glowing veins of traffic. Daniel stumbled out first, his tie loose, face streaked with panic and sweat. "Elena," he called, his voice breaking. "Elena, please just listen." She stood at the railing, calm as the skyline, her blue gown catching the wind like silk armor. Her reflection shimmered in the wet pavement, the same kind of rain that had once soaked her as she left him 5 years ago. But this time, she was dry, untouchable. Daniel approached slowly, hands trembling. "Please," he whispered, falling to his knees. "I lost everything. The investors, the company, even Clara left. He swallowed hard. "I have nothing left." Elena turned slightly, her expression unreadable. "No, Daniel," she said softly. "You still have what you always had, your excuses." He blinked, tears spilling freely now. "I was wrong. About you. About everything. I was blind, stupid, drunk on my own pride. Just give me one chance to make it right." For a heartbeat, the air between them was still. Only the hum of the city below broke the silence. Elena stepped closer, her heels clicking against the stone. "Do you remember the night I begged you to believe in me?" she asked quietly. "When I told you that partnership meant standing together, not tearing down?" Daniel nodded weakly, unable to meet her gaze. "I begged for respect," she continued. "Not money, not position, just respect." And you laughed. Her voice didn't rise, it cut like ice through air. He covered his face, sobbing. "I know. I was a fool." Elena's tone softened, almost mournful. "You didn't lose me tonight, Daniel. You lost me the day I realized I didn't need your approval to exist." Lightning flickered in the distance, painting the sky in cold blue. Daniel lifted his head. Her silhouette glowed against the city lights, radiant and resolute. "You said once, keep everything," she murmured, her eyes on the skyline. "And I did. I kept the lessons, the strength, and the peace you threw away." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Elena, please. I don't even know who I am without you." She studied him for a long moment. "Then maybe it's time you find out," she said gently, turning toward the elevator. As the doors slid open, Daniel remained kneeling, the rain returning soft, cold, relentless. Inside the elevator, Elena pressed the top floor button. Her reflection smiled faintly in the mirrored wall. "Peace," she whispered, "was always the real empire." The city was still half asleep when the first light crept over the skyline. A pale gold sun spilled across the glass towers, setting Aurora's logo aglow. From her office balcony, Elena stood barefoot, coffee in hand, the wind teasing strands of her hair. The night storm had passed, leaving behind a world rinsed clean. Inside, the TV murmured softly, headlines flashing her face, her name, her story. Aurora CEO exposes corruption at gala. Elena Carter Turner, the woman who walked away and won. But she didn't smile at them. She didn't need to. The moment she had once dreamed of revenge, vindication, power. It was here. Yet what filled her heart wasn't triumph, it was peace. Her voice, calm and steady, flowed like narration over the quiet dawn. I walked away with nothing they could count and came back with everything they can't touch. The city glittered below, every building reflecting fragments of her journey, fragments that had once been pain. She saw herself 5 years ago, standing in the rain outside that boutique, divorce papers trembling in her hands. Then, the flickering motel sign that spelled OP, where hope once was. Then Mrs. Carter's kind face offering that first seed fund, and the paper cranes on her old co-working desk, each one a promise folded in silence. The camera of memory moved faster, deals signed, nights without sleep, victories that no one saw. The cracks that once defined her had become the architecture of something unshakable. She turned her gaze eastward, toward the rising sun. The glass wall behind her caught the reflection of the Aurora logo, the word itself glowing like prophecy. Dawn always comes quietly. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message blinked on the screen from Mrs. Carter. Proud of you. Always knew you'd build your own light. Elena smiled softly. It wasn't light I built, she murmured. It was truth. She took a slow sip of coffee. Below, people hurried to work, unaware that the woman in the glass tower had once slept on a motel bed with nothing but a notebook and faith. The camera lingered on her face, serene, strong, human. As she turned to go inside, a single paper crane fluttered from her desk, caught by the morning wind. It drifted over the balcony, circling once before rising toward the sun. Down below, a young woman stopped to pick up the fallen paper crane. She turned it over, reading the faint words written on its wing. Start again. And somewhere in the distance, another story began. Camera lights flared. The studio was alive with quiet tension, the kind that comes before truth is spoken aloud. Elena sat poised in her cream suit, every detail deliberate yet unforced. Across from her sat Diane Moore, veteran journalist and host of The World Speaks. 3, 2, 1, live, the producer whispered. Good evening, Diane began, her tone warm but sharp. Tonight we sit with a woman whose story has redefined strength and integrity, CEO of Aurora Holdings, Miss Elena Carter Turner. Applause filled the air, fading into respectful silence. Elena smiled, calm and radiant under the studio lights. Thank you for having me. Diane leaned forward. The world watched your rise, Miss Turner. From anonymity to leadership. From heartbreak to empire. Tell us, what do you want people to remember about your journey? Elena paused, eyes drifting toward the camera lens, as though she were speaking directly to every woman watching. I want them to remember, she said softly, that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of rebuilding. The audience stilled. Even Diane blinked, slightly caught off guard by the weight of the answer. Elena continued, voice gaining quiet strength. There were nights when I thought losing everything meant the end. But I learned something powerful. When you walk away quietly, you give yourself the chance to start again on your own terms. A flashback montage played briefly across the broadcast screen. The rain-soaked night, the motel notebook, Mrs. Carter's mentorship, the gala lights all stitched into one seamless reflection of resilience. Diane smiled. And now, Aurora Holdings stands as a global symbol of ethical leadership. If you could speak directly to women who are starting over, what would you tell them? Elena's expression softened, but her words landed like stone. Leave quietly if you must, she said, but never stop building loudly inside. The room erupted into applause. A few audience members even stood. Diane nodded, her voice trembling slightly. A message not just for women, but for anyone who has ever been broken and dared to rebuild. The camera zoomed in as Elena looked toward the studio window. The dawn light was breaking outside, the same golden hue that once reflected across her office balcony. The microphone before her gleamed, the voice she once lost, now amplified for the world to hear. As the interview faded to black, the Aurora logo appeared across the screen, dissolving into sunrise. Over the credits, Elena's voice lingered. Every dawn begins in darkness, and every woman who walks away quietly carries the power to build her own light.